Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. This is the final episode for Section 31. It's the last one. We're not doing any more. This is the end.
Sad.
But just to let you know, this is a two-parter, right? This is a two-parter. So we've got this first. This is part one, and then we've got part two. All right. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Even though this is the last episode, we have two parts to the last episode. All right. So consider this help me pronounce it, penultimate episode.
The penultimate episode, indeed.
There we go. There we go.
You got it.
And with me, I have my wonderful co-host. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm William Danger Newman. Been a lifelong Trek fan since the original series aired, and I love thinking, talking, and hypotheticalizing, if that's a word, about Section 31. So I can't wait to get to
it. Excellent. As always, my name is Jermaine. Thank you all for joining us yet again. And we are going to play our intro, and then we're going to get started.
All right.
What's up, Trekkies? It's your boy Will Walford here with Trekker's Delight, a Star Trek-inspired podcast. Before we get started, we're going to give away $100, so make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel where we will announce the lucky winner every single week. Now, welcome to Trekker's Delight.
All right. So the assignment, everyone, was to watch, I don't know, was it about 5-6 different episodes of season 2 of Discovery?
Yes.
And, it was a lot. It was a lot. Not all of it was about Section 31, which is why we said, hey, let's just end it in this way.
Yep.
So I don't want to do a recap, but high level Danger. What were your thoughts about these episodes? And we don't necessarily have to talk about Section 31, just in general, your impressions of the episode.
Well, I liked the episodes. I liked the season with the Red Angel. I thought it had a lot of good twists in there, a lot of interesting developments, and the whole control, the artificial intelligence that was given the ability to kind of make decisions on its own on behalf of Section 31. So Section 31, as we know, it was run by those three admirals. There was a Vulcan, an Earth human, Tellarite, and an Andorian, the four admirals that ran Section 31.
And a Vulcan.
And what?
And a Vulcan.
And yeah, didn't I? I thought did I miss Vulcan? What did I say? Well, Tellarite, Andorian, Vulcan, and Earth, right?
Yeah.
Those four. If I missed Vulcan, and my apologies to the planet Vulcan, and no offense intended. And so those four admirals made decisions, and they had this artificial intelligence program that they called Control, and every entity within the Federation fed information into this control system. And then the control system would come up with suggestions. And the admirals would look at it and analyze it and decide what to do going forward, right? And at some point, according to this episode, maybe early in this season, or maybe the previous season, the admirals decided, in the interest of expediency, perhaps because of the war with the Klingons, they decided to cede that decision-making authority over to this artificial intelligence called Control. And so that's kind of where this season kicked off from a Section 31 perspective. And of course, there's the whole thing with the Red Angel and what that's all about. And we find out towards the end of the season that this whole Red Angel thing was a way of correcting this mistake that these admirals made of letting this Control AI start making decisions on behalf of Section 31. So I thought it was a good episode. I thought it started off interesting. There was a lot of Section 31 information that came out during the season. We learned a lot more about Section 31 in this era, because previously in the original series of Trek, there was no Section 31 discussed. It was never brought up because it was, came about during the TNG era, or really, I guess, DS9 maybe. So it was kind of our first introduction to what it was like in this era. We did see, of course, Section 31 in the Enterprise series. So we know what it was like in the very beginning. We knew what it was like in the TNG, Voyager, DS9 era, but we'd never seen it in the TOS era. So it was interesting to see where it had gone from the Enterprise era. So I thought it was a good episode, good season.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, to be honest with you, I really thought that season 2 was probably the strongest of all the seasons for Discovery. And in my opinion, one of the strongest seasons for Star Trek in general.
Okay.
I'm not being specific to, like, hey, Deep Space Nine was better than. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that in terms of a story arc that was fairly consistent, brought the action, developed its story in such a way where, especially in that final episode, where like certain statements were made and they were reminding us of all these things that were made, and at the time we were like, what's going on? They were they kind of pulled it all together, and I really enjoyed it. It.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good season, very entertaining, a lot of action, a lot of information, a lot of stuff going on. I liked it. Yeah.
It was very, very nice too, to see these characters that we've known for years. Some more than others, obviously. We know Spock a whole lot more than we knew Pike or number one. But to see them, on kind of like setting off, and then also understanding why we never knew about Michael Burnham.
Right. Yeah, I thought that was very clever the way they did that. And it was kind of interesting as well, I think, for those fans that are, also watching Strange New Worlds, the most recent episode, well, not the most recent episode, but the one where they're battling the Gorn. And Spock performs the mind meld with La'an. And towards the end of it, she, sharing his mind, realizes that he had a sister and that's not in the Starfleet records. And he abruptly ends the mind meld because he didn't want to talk about it. And she wisely did not pursue it. So I think, that's just going to reinforce the whole reason why we never heard about Michael Burnham. So I thought that was nice the way they did that. It was a good tie-in.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very, very, very nice. Yes. I loved it. I really, really loved that season. Not to say that I didn't enjoy the later season. I think season 4 was probably the worst.
Really? Because I think season 4 was I think my favorite.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it was my favorite season, mostly because of this alien species that was so totally different from anything we'd ever encountered before, and the method of learning how to communicate with it, and the type of species, and what type of environment they lived in, and how strange and alien they were, to have this DMA device that is actually devastating life, that they had no concept there could even be such life. So yeah, I really
The
like
social
that.
ramifications of it.
Yeah, and I like the fact that we were introduced to the species that was so totally different from anything we'd ever seen before.
One thing that I will say, just to kind of piggyback off of your comments, that
Yeah.
season, the 4th season, it had me thinking, what a new thing to actually discover. Like, why are we stuck in just this one galaxy? Why
Right.
can't we go
Right.
off and explore more places? And so
Right.
it made me think, are we going to go there? Is it even possible for us to go to this new galaxy?
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think with the warp technology that we have available to us as we know it, it's really not possible because of the vast distances involved. If the Discovery was not able to use the mycelial network to do a jump, it would have taken, a long time, way too
Yeah.
long to get there to have any effect.
Yeah.
And then I
Well,
think, oh, go ahead.
what was his name? Tarka? He
Yes,
invented the synthetic whatever. And so I'm not saying that all ships could do it, but it's possible for a
true.
select few to get
Right. Right. He did create that synthetic spore drive. Now, again, that's 1,000 years in the future. Right. So it's unlikely we're going to see that happen in Strange New Worlds.
No, not Strange New Worlds. I'm thinking about Discovery.
No, I know. But now that Discovery's 1,000 years in the future, and they're trying to replicate Discovery's spore drive, perhaps they could go visit other galaxies. Certainly, they could probably go back and visit that alien species that we encountered last season, because we apparently have at least the beginnings of some dialogue with them and perhaps some common understanding.
Yes.
So there's that, right?
Yeah, it was also really good, at least for me, to see that we began talking to an alien species, even though we're completely different, but it wasn't antagonistic. It started off peacefully. I mean, from our perspective, no, it wasn't peaceful. But once they understood where we were coming from, they immediately stopped doing what they were doing, and they committed to change. And I thought that was wonderful. Like, how many species do you interact with that are, that peaceful?
That understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you have, the two factions that were there, the Tarka and what was Burnham's love interest, Book, Tarka and Book, and they're going there to try to destroy them, essentially, right? And then you have Burnham and the crew of Discovery that's going there to try to open up a dialogue and try to get some common understanding. And a species that saw both of those factions going might not have been so receptive to what was going on there. So it was interesting the way that whole thing played out.
Yeah. You're reminding me a whole lot about season 4. You are.
Yeah.
You really are.
Yeah. I don't want to be reminded about it too much because I still have a huge bone to pick with Tarka getting control of Book's ship, and the fact that Book didn't have just the basic level of security to lock him out just infuriates me. And how Ndoya, the security general from Earth, was able to get into Discovery systems. No, I got a few issues with their security, their IT systems there.
Well, they didn't have data.
Right.
They didn't have data on their shit.
Right. They didn't even need data. All they would need is me. I know enough. Your access, right? Change your password frequently. Don't give the keys to the IT kingdom to randos that are on the ship for a single mission that aren't even members of the Federation. What are you thinking? Right?
I was trying to I was trying to create a nice bow, like, okay.
Trying to wrap it up.
But
And then
you
I
were
go off
like,
on
no.
this tangent. Just infuriated me. But other than that, I really loved the season.
Oh, God. Oh, this is good. I'm sweating over here. Cool. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Okay.
So did Section 31 create the Borg because of Control's fusion with the Leland character? Is it possible that during that time span in which Control was in effect Leland, is it possible that he went back in time or forward in time, either one, especially back, to create the Borg? Is it possible?
In my mind, no. I don't think Leland had access to time travel technology. And we know that the Borg is off in the Delta Quadrant, right?
Yeah, correct.
That's where they're headquartered. So, I mean, at the time, the TOS era, warp capability, I mean, we know later in the Voyager era that it was going to take them 70 some years to get from the Delta Quadrant back to the Federation, right? So it would have taken Leland presumably at least that long to get to the Delta Quadrant. And then, of course, somehow he's got to figure out time travel to go back in time. And the other thing that kind of tells me no is that I think we saw at a couple of points there, one point where the Control AI took over Leland, and then again later on in one of the other episodes, remember the Section 31 ship that failed to report or reported 10 minutes late from their respective report time, and Burnham and Spock went to go investigate, and they found out that the AI had, jettisoned the crew out into space.
Yeah.
And when they got on the ship, they found one crewman left there. That turned out to be a crewman that Burnham had served with on the Senjo. Excuse me. And it turned out that crewman, spoiler alert, was actually the Control AI, much as Leland was. But it's mentioned in there that that crewman had been killed, and that the Control AI basically rebuilt and reanimated him. And so we could see that Burnham is shooting this crewman, right? And she's blowing holes in his chest. You can see through his chest. And then these nanites are just rebuilding him and fusing him back together again. That technology is something that the Borg didn't have. I mean, if the Borg got shot with a phaser, you wouldn't blast a hole in him. You'd just they would kill them until the Borg technology adapted to create shielding, right? Because they would have to rotate their phaser modulation in order to get through that. So I think they're definitely two different species, whereas Leland and this crewman were entirely kind of composed of nanites. They were rebuilt such that they didn't have any biologic component. They were all machine, essentially. The Borg, on the other hand, were biologic with machine parts grafted onto them. So I think they're two different species, and I would say definitely not that they're the same thing, in my opinion.
Okay, good, great. We agree. We
Okay,
agree.
good.
We agree. Next question, and we have about 10 minutes for this. All right. So
Okay.
the next question deals with Ash Tyler. So we remember
Mm.
that Ash Tyler picks up the mantle of Section 31. At the end of the season, we learn that he becomes the permanent head of Section 31.
Yes.
What do you think his vision or his goals for Section 31 will be, and its possible ramifications for Starfleet and the Federation?
Yeah. Well, I feel good about Ash Tyler running Section 31. If anybody's going to run it. Okay.
I'm glad Jason is not here, because Jason would have trashed Ash Tyler. He
He
hates
would
Ash
have.
Tyler. He hates Ash
Oh,
Tyler.
that's right. He does. I remember that now. Yeah. Well, Jason and I would have to go head to head on this. And I'd be ready to take him on, because here's my theory behind this, right?
Okay.
So we see in this series, at one point, Burnham goes to Ash Tyler, meets him in his quarters, and she's talking to him, and because she realized that he's joined Section 31, and she said, how can you be okay with that sort of a thing? And he comes back and he says, I agree with their mission statement, their goal. I don't always agree with the means to get there. So in his view, the end does
Don't
not
always.
justify the means, right? And so I think having him in charge of control will essentially moderate that organization to a point where they will be reined in. And there are certain things they will not be allowed to do in the advancement of Federation interests. They will be more, I would say, more Federation aligned, if you will, in the way they act. So I think it's good. And I think long term, that will be good for both Section 31 and for the Federation. I think it'll be a good goal for them to go forward, because essentially now he's got to rebuild Section 31 from the ground up, right? Because I think Control AI pretty much took control of all those ships and killed all those crewmen. So they're starting from scratch. And I think he's got the right attitude. I think having insight into both the Klingon world and the Klingon method of operation and the Federation, and understanding both so intimately as he does because of the way he was created, essentially, gives him a unique perspective. And sort of, I envision it the way, if you remember, in season 3 of Discovery, when Georgiou goes to the Guardian of Forever.
Okay.
And the Guardian of Forever sends Georgiou back to the mirror universe. And because she doesn't believe that she's changed, she thinks she's just the way she always was. But when she goes back to the mirror universe and she's immersed back in that dog eat dog culture, right? She realizes how abhorrent it really is, and how much she really has changed, and how much she now embraces the ideals, I think, of the Federation.
And not just that, because of her change, in my opinion, because of her change. Well, I'm not gonna steal your thunder, but I'm gonna be specific to the mirror universe. Within the mirror universe, others within the mirror universe now see that there is hope.
Yes, right.
So
Saru, right?
Exactly. So I don't want to steal your thunder. Keep going with where you're going.
Yeah. So I think in the way that Georgiou was able to see the essentially horror of the way the mirror universe operates in comparison to the way our universe operates, our Federation operates, is a similar way in which Ash Tyler has a perspective of Klingon culture compared to Federation culture, and that he sees the benefit of an inclusive and cooperative society, the benefit of diversity, and the benefit of taking the high road and doing things, Federation style.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think he's going to be great for Section 31.
And I completely agree. However, at the end of the last episode of season 2, I don't even know I'm gonna assume it was an admiral. I don't know his name, but he basically said, "Hey, would you like to be, over Section 31?" My thought in that moment was, have they really learned the lesson of Section 31? That was my thought in the moment. And what pressures will they put upon Ash Tyler?
Sure.
To be or to keep things the way that they had been, because there's no assurance that that others outside of Section 31 didn't actually agree with Section 31.
Right.
So
and I would say that, to your point, that they probably did agree with Section 31, because it seems to me like in this era that Section 31 and the Federation are very intimately linked, which is different from what we see in the DS9 era, right?
Agreed.
Where Section 31 is a mysterious,
people didn't even
known.
No one knew about it.
Right.
No one knew.
So
not even Cisco,
like,
a captain. He didn't even know.
Right. So it's almost like between then and now, Section 31 has divested completely from the Federation, and they kind of do things their own way. So, I don't want to continue with that, because I think our next question here might lead to my next thought.
Oh, well, the only thing that I wanted to say was I think that is part of Ash Tyler's vision.
Okay.
Just
separating them from the Federation?
Well, no, not necessarily separating them, but making them a bit more cloak and dagger, less known, in the completely operating within the shadows, so much so that no one knows that they even exist. And I think that was, if Section 31's ultimate goal is to stop others from harming the Federation, and there's another goal too, and that has a whole lot to do with other species' technology. What Section 31 seeks to do is to basically co-opt their technology, either by destroying their technology or taking it from them and learning it for themselves. So if that is the case, then there's a way in which he could do that, but at the same time continue to remain unknown by the rest of the Federation.
In the shadows. Right. Yep. Yeah. No, I agree.
Well, actually we're at the 28-minute mark, and so I think what I'm going to do is I am going to play the exit music, and we are going to prepare for the second section of Section 31, which will actually be our last episode, everyone.
The ultimate episode. Because we're in the penultimate now, right? So that has to be the ultimate. So they definitely don't want to miss the next one. Because you don't get better than ultimate. Right?
See you all.
Peace out.
Now, again, I'm going to say this again because we're near the end of our show. If you are our allies, we are not talking to you. We are not talking to you. This does not... Okay? We're not talking to you. Stop trying to take our and make it your goddamn business. It ain't got nothing to do with you. It ain't got nothing to do with you.
Our experience of grief independently.
Bruh.
Yes.
I love that they're in the comments.
So much is like I'm just reading the comments.
Yeah. They should broaden their child act. Such a good point, Will. God, that's such a good point. And he's really thought about it too. You should be here. William, get over here.
I thought he had a girlfriend on Insta. It's been ages since I've mucked about, but
Okay, moving on. Let's move on.